everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books and welcome to another book recommendation video. Hey everybody, welcome back, and this is going to be another series recommendation. This is going to be on Tillie Cole's the Hades Hangman series, and I'm going to film this in a couple of clips. I think probably 2. We'll see how I do, because it's a really long series. I think there are like 8 books in the series, and so I've already completed 3. I'm going to read the 4th one today, and so I don't want to lose anything or forget anything, so I'm going to film it as I go. Okay, having said that, book 1 is It Ain't Me, Babe. And I have to say that this series is amazing. Let me first start off by saying, please check out the trigger warnings, because this is intense. I like that Tillie Cole gives you an author's note at the beginning. And in the author's note, she explains that she has a fascination and has done a lot of research into the new religious movement. And so these are basically any type of cult organizations where there's fanaticism and there is a set of doctrine that people must follow, and there are severe punishments that are put down if you don't follow the teachings, and there are severe practices in these teachings. Okay, having said that, this is really tough because she tells you right at the onset that It Ain't Me is a work of fiction, but the doctrine, practices, and experiences of Salome, her sisters, and the order in this novel are also inspired by several brave women who chose to share their story with me. So these are real practices, and these are things that are actually done, and there are women that are actually suffering through these types of events. It kind of breaks my heart. Like, I have a sensitive heart, and so it kind of breaks my heart and gets me upset to hear that there are people that are subject to this bullshit. But this is a work of fiction. There's a lot of trigger warnings. There's trigger warnings for rape, hands down, rape, incest, violence, murder, everything that you can think of. All the trigger warnings are in here. And I think it's harder to read because you know that these things are actually happening, even though this is a work of fiction. Okay, having said that, let me explain the ongoing backstory that is going to be that's a thread through each of the books. The plot is that River Styx Nash is, in the beginning of this book, he's young. He's like a kid, like 10, 12, something, young. He's with his dad. They are at a dump site and they're disposing of a body because they're part of an MC club. And this is what they do. And he comes upon a fence that's a high fence that's like, doesn't really belong out in the middle of nowhere, but there's this fence. And he sees this girl that is dressed in pilgrim attire. She looks like she's like from the Amish country, something crazy. And he doesn't understand, and she clearly is distressed and bloodied, and something's wrong. And what we learn very quickly is that River Styx his name is River, he has a speech impediment, and he does not speak properly, and he cannot speak, and he doesn't speak to anybody. And so, but he is so enthralled with this girl, he calls her Wolf Girl, because she has such intense gray blue eyes and dark black hair and very porcelain skin, that he is forced to speak with her, and he speaks, and he does. He has a severe speech impediment, but he forces through it, and he speaks to her. And he's not able to, she doesn't speak back to him, she doesn't talk, but he is enthralled with her. And to make a long story short, they are pulled apart very, very quickly because his father calls, she won't speak to him, and they are not able to talk, and no interaction happens between them. And then the story picks up 15 years later. And so what we discover 15 years later, and I don't want to tell too much, is that there is this religious cult organization that strongly preaches this Christian doctrine that is like bogus and out of like crazy land. And many of the male members practice pedophilia against female children to rid them of sin. And so that's what we sort of discover. And River Styx Nash, I'm not telling you how he finds out about this. And as a result of him finding out about this, there is an ongoing battle to keep Salome safe, and the cult and organization coming after her to try to recapture her. And so through every one of the books, it is an ongoing battle between three factions: the KKK, the Hades Hangman series, and the cult, this cult organization. And so every time there's something going on with whether or not the KKK and the cult organization are partnering to steal goods away from the Hades Hangman, or if they're stealing women or whatever they're doing. But the Hades Hangman Motorcycle Club is really based on the story of Hades and Persephone. So that's really told in this book as well. And it's called It Ain't Me, Babe, because when Styx, is now known as Styx, is talking to Salome, and Salome is like, "You're the one for me." He's like, and he does it in a stutter, and I don't want to misappropriate, but he says, "It ain't me, babe. I'm not the one for you." There also is a love triangle in this book that between Salome and Styx and another character in the MC named Ryder, and that really sets up the scene for every other book that's coming forward. And I have to tell you that this series is one of the best MC romances that I have ever read. It gives you everything. There is depth of plot, there's suspense, there's romance, there's love triangle, there's honesty, there's trust, there's forbidden love, there's just that in spades. You're on the edge of your seat. It's a page turner. You can't put it down. It is absolutely amazing. Every time I read something at Tillie Cole, I thought that oh, this is the crescendo, like this is amazing, and then it just takes it to the next level. This is a 5 out of 5 star for sure. And again, I think to know that there are these religious cults like Waco, right? Because it takes place in Texas. And they talk about Waco in here, but to find this woman behind a fence and then be caught up on her for years and years and years, and then to find that, she really does exist when everybody around him said, "You're crazy, like you hallucinated this," is like mind-blowing. And so Styx has to come to, because he's got a lot of responsibility being the president of a large MC at a very young age, and he has to put the club first, and club is more important, and people are trying to push them apart, and like, what does this all mean, and is he going to succumb, and how is he going to handle all this business? And then you've got the club sluts and jealousy and lots of dynamics. So there's just a lot of dialogue, a lot of dynamics. The more there is dialogue, the more that there is dynamics going on and the more interesting it is. So this is It Ain't Me, Babe. 5 out of 5 star for sure. So then the second book then continues on with the theme of the KKK, the cult, and the MC. But now this story then picks up with, you've got Kai, who is the vice president, and Delilah, who is Salome's sister. And so there is some interesting things that go on. There is also a very interesting dynamic in here between a guy named Flame, who is crazy, and he's part of the MC, and he's cuckoo, and he's always cutting himself, and you're like, dude, Flame, what is up with you? What's going on? And another sister that's at the organization, and so you're trying to find out what's going on with that. But this story it's interesting because Delilah is broken. She's been told that she's a cursed sister because of her immense beauty, and all the men in this pedophilia cult organization are told that you make us stray from our religious practices and ways because you're so beautiful and you force us to do this, and so we have to rid you of your beauty. And so there is torture in this book. There are awful, awful things, but Kai has to help her to overcome, because she really has she's been indoctrinated and internalized all of these beliefs, and she truly believes that because of her beauty she's evil and she's dirty and she's sinful, and he tries to help her overcome that, and some really terrible stuff goes down in here, and it is just horrific and horrible, and you are just like shocked, but at the same time you're enthralled and you can't put it down and you can't stop. So this book is a 5 out of 5 star. It's amazing. So good. And the way that Kai loves her and the lengths that he's willing to go through. And like, you think of like MC guys as like these rough and tumble kind of, they're killers, and they are these rough and tumble illegal guys that like call women bitches and like, are gritty and raw, but they're the good guys in this, and these Bible thumping religious cult fanatics are like, and people try to tell them that this is pedophilia, and they're just like, this is God's will. It's crazy. It's crazy making. So that's this book. And this one is the creme de la creme. Let me tell you, this is Souls Unfractured. This is book 3. And this story is about Flame and the sister, Maddie, of these two. So you've got Salome, and then you've got Lila, and then the third sister is Maddie. And this is about two completely broken characters. And you're hearing about their story sort of picking up here. You get it, and you're like, I need their story. And you get it here. And it is heart-wrenching because their souls are completely fractured. And he is a broken hero. He's a virginal broken hero that has been abused and neglected his entire life, and the only way that he copes is through self-abuse, and you start to find out why he's a cutter and why he does what he does. And Maddie has been so abused and raped repeatedly multiple times throughout her life, and she is so fractured and so terrified, but the only person who makes her feel safe is this damaged hero, Flame. And so you start to hear their story, and as he has saved her multiple times in this book, he really saves her here. But she then comes back and says, he has saved me, now it is my turn to save him. And she brings him from the brink of insanity back to the land of the living. And it is beautiful. It is a gorgeous story that is worth telling for any person who has ever experienced abuse, who has ever suffered from trauma, who has ever suffered from PTSD, for other people to understand what it's like and the hell that you live in every day to try to be normal and to try to allow people to understand you or try to understand other people as well. Flame also is clearly on the autism spectrum, and so he has had that his whole life, but he's born into poverty, and oftentimes with poverty people don't have the language or the understanding of how to deal with someone who's different. And oftentimes when you have a child that is different, that is difficult for parents to deal with, and as a result they deal with it in the terms of abusive ways, and that's very much what happens here. But these two broken characters find their way to health, and they find their way to a new normal, and they find their way to each other, and a normal that works for them. And I absolutely love this book. It is a 6 out of 5 stars, as Jen from the Book Refuge would say. This is like the creme de la creme. It is like the crescendo. It's so amazing and so well done, and it covers such sensitive topics, and she does it in a way that is heart-wrenching enough but subtle enough that it's not like overwhelming and overpowering, but at the same time it's a story that needs to be told. Okay, so you guys, that's the first 3 books in the series. I am going on to book 4, and I will talk about that clip next. See you over there. Okay, so I wanted to jump on really quick and do a review of book 4 and 5 of the Hangman series. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these books because you have to read book 1, 2, and 3 prior to reading these books, because there's an ongoing plot and an arc or character development that's going on, and Tillie is very specific about asking for no spoilers. So I don't want to give any spoilers away, but the story and the plot develops, and the characters in these books, and it's called Deep Redemption, and it's all about it's about redemption. This is the first book in this series that I really cried in, because this character is so misunderstood, and we have been introduced to this character through all of the books. We met him in book 1, and we see him throughout everything, and he is misunderstood and blamed for a lot of things and takes a lot of responsibility on to himself that is not his responsibility. He is tortured. There's trigger warnings in this book. In all this series, there are all the trigger warnings, and so you need to check it out. This book, it was heart-wrenching and heartbreaking, but it's about forgiveness and honesty and respect and trust, and trusting what a person says, and also seeing the goodness when no one else sees the goodness in someone. and the steps and the lengths that you will go to protect the person that you love. I have to say that this book was so good, and it's very interesting because of the way that the Hangman, you know, guys that are in the club, in the MC club, choose to handle this character is really heart-wrenching and heartbreaking, and it is such a good book. It's such a good book. It brings all the feels and everything into this that is like an emotional sort of angst and roller coaster that you go on, but it is about redemption, and it is about love, and it is about trusting the people that you love to get you through stuff. And so this book, I have to say, is the best book in the series so far. It is amazing. Read all the other books first and get to this book, and my God, you will not be disappointed, because it delivers in all the ways possible. Okay, so then the last book that I've read is Damnable Grace, and again, this is there's a lot of trigger warnings in this book. There are a lot of broken characters in this book. This is about PTSD on both the heroine and the hero's side. It's about military PTSD and things that happen in your past, and how you bring every character in this series, both the heroine and the hero, bring trauma. And it's about two broken people coming together and finding love and finding healing and finding health and finding restoration of their soul as a result of finding that other person that helps you to figure out who you are and who you need to be and what steps you need to take to heal. And this is no different. So this is still a 5 out of 5 star, but I wasn't as invested in these characters as I have been in others. And maybe because I just came off the heels of this, which just tore my heart out and took me to a whole nother plane. And then I read this, and I like the characters and I'm invested in them, but not quite the same way, but it's still a 5 out of 5 star nonetheless. Let me say this, so this is book 5. So all of the first 5 books, for whatever reason, are all on Audible. And they're Audible originals, so that you can only find them on Audible. So having said that, those first 5 books are on Audible. Every book, the next book in the series is I Do Babe, which is 5.5, and it's a short novella, and it's not on Kindle, and it's just a little like 100-page book that I'm gonna go ahead and read tonight. And then the remaining 3 books in the series with 1 novella, so 4 books, are not on Audible. They are not on audio, so I'm gonna go ahead and read them via the Alexa app, and so we'll see how that goes. I'll tell you what I think about them after I do that, but this is a 5 out of 5 star for sure, and the last book in the series that you can find on audiobook and on Audible. And so I will see you in the next clip. Hi, okay, so I'm back to finish up the last 5 books in the Hades Hangman series, and this has been a ride. It's been a wild ride. Okay, so let me go into a couple of the novellas. So this is I Do Babe, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but this is obviously a final nuptial or marriage of 2 main characters in the book. They finally have gotten here, and it talks about the trials and sort of challenges that they have to overcome in order to get there, and anxieties and worries that they have, but ultimately everybody gets their HEA. It all works out in the long run, and it's well worth it. And this is a really good, it's a quick read. I think it's like only it's like 80 pages, so it's very, very quick and easy. So that's very sweet. 5 out of 5 star for sure. The next book in the series is Crux Untamed, and this is Kai's sister. Kai is the VP to Styx of the Hades Hangman Club. It's his sister's story. We've learned about her from one of the second books, Hearts Recaptured, I think. We hear about her, and she's been hidden away because there is some involvement with the Mexican cartel, and she obviously got involved with somebody in the Mexican cartel, and as a result, she had to be spirited away and protected. They had to break her out, and so we hear about her story. This book is shocking. It is, I'm not even going to tell you who who the love interests are in this story. You're going to love it. This is one of my favorite books in the series, and it is about overcoming odds. It's heartbreaking. There's a lot of conversation in this book around acceptance and differential, because we know that there's an involvement as we step away from the cult, that cult aspect of things, and that is being overcome. Then in steps the next new enemy, and that enemy is the Ku Klux Klan. And so therefore everything is set in Austin, Texas, but there is a Louisiana contingent, and with the Louisiana contingent there comes some racism and against people of color and people that are multicultural and being called derogatory names. And so this is addressed face first, head on in this book, and overcoming demons. And like I said, every character in these books, these are all dark novels, every character has a dark past, both hero and heroine, and they come together, these two broken souls, in order to heal, and they help each other heal. And this is no exception. And I don't want to give away too much, but I have to say I was shocked. I was shocked. I was shocked. I was not expecting the direction that this book took. I was not expecting the love interest that it took and the way that it sort of played out, but I loved it. Hands down, I loved it. This is one of the first books outside of Deep Redemption that I cried in. I cried in this because I just identified with many of the characters in this book. I identified with their plight, and I loved how it all resolved itself, and it was just beautiful, and they're just so damaged and so broken, but it was so good. I loved it, absolutely. 5 out of 5 star. Then this is a long time coming. This is Beauty Found, and we've heard about Tank from book 1. Tank is the Hades Hangman's mechanic. He is a patched in brother, and we know about Beauty. Beauty, again, from book 1, it ain't me, babe. She really takes May under her wing and really supports her, and Beauty is like the classic old lady, and so we wanted to hear their story, and so we hear a little bit about it in It Ain't Me, Babe, in that she says, I was a beauty queen, and that's why they call me Beauty, and I literally ran out of a beauty pageant and hopped on the back of a dude's motorcycle, and here I am. And so you get this story here, and it's absolutely amazing. We get to hear about Tank and Tanner's relationship, and we hear that Tank and Tanner grew up together, and they were indoctrinated into the Klan from a they call it the invisible empire, and they were indoctrinated into that from head to toe, tats. And we see how Tank gets out, and we see his relationship with Tanner and why that's so relevant and why they are still best friends and why it's so difficult for Tank and Tanner to this day. We know that Tanner has stepped away from, you hear about in here, Tanner has stepped away from the KKK and has refused to continue to follow that indoctrinated path. And we hear that it's because he fell in love with a Mexican cartel's daughter. And so we get a little bit of that in here. And it was we get to see more of Beauty, and it is just, and then you also get to see Reaper, who is Styx's father's relationship, because when Tank comes on board with the Hades Hangman Club, Styx is still a teenager. He hasn't taken over yet, and his father is the president of the MC, and Kai's dad is the VP, and so you get to see that interaction as well. And so you see some of the older characters like Bull, who've been around forever. You get to see their interaction, and so it was a really good read, and it's a 5 out of 5 star for sure. So then it's really nice because you get set up here with Tanner and Tank's story, and now this is Tanner and Tanner's story with Adelita. And you get to hear, and it's a lot of going back, and this is the one time that I didn't like. It creates so much angst because you know in the story that the Hades Hangman are going to kidnap someone from the Mexican cartel, and you know that it's a cousin to Adelita, and so there's a lot of going back and filling in the story of how they met and what that was like and how they've all come to this current place of where they are. So it created a lot of angst because you know that they're kidnapping, and what you find is that the person that they're kidnapping, and you learn this really early on, is not the cousin, it's actually Adelita. And so like, what are they gonna do, and how is Tanner gonna find out about this, and what does this mean? and it's just angsty, and it's, you know, it's so much. But at the same time, I would have liked that they didn't spend so much time in the past, but I get that you need to tell the story, but I felt like half it was spent in the past and half in the present. And of course, there's a third act conflict. There's a kidnapping. You know, there's forced proximity. There's abuse. There's all these things that happen. You know, the Mexican cartel as well as the KKK are trafficking, and not necessarily just in drugs and guns, but they also traffic in women, and they treat these women horribly. And it is heavy, heavy, heavy. And you start to see a lot of Adelita's relationship with her father and what that means, and her connection to the club, the Hades Hangman Club. So there's lots of twists and turns in directions that you didn't think that this was going to go in. And so this was really, really good. And then the last book in this series that she's published was just published in 2020, and this is My Maddie. And I absolutely love it because we get to see Maddie's story with Flame here in Souls Unfractured, and they are just both so broken. And we waited for 3 books to get Maddie and Flame's story, and then we waited another sort of 4 books to get to My Maddie. And man, this, I looked up some of the reviews on this, and people didn't like this book because they thought it was a recapitulation of this, and I didn't. I expected this because it's not going to get all wrapped up, because they're so broken. They're so broken, and they've been through so much that you can't expect in one book that it's all resolved and they have an HEA and they're moving off into the sunset, like, and that's it. No, it's not. This has to get put to bed. And so over here, she does it. All of the things that weren't really resolved needed to finally get resolved through this third act, sort of in another book, situation that comes up, and Flame totally loses it because he completely depends on Maddie for everything, and he needs to heal, and he does his healing here. And the way that this book ends and the way that he becomes is what I completely expected, but he needed to go through that sort of 180 resolution to get there. There also is a lot of setup for Asher, his brother, that comes to join here, his story and the spiral that he's going on and what's coming up next. I believe that the next books in the series are going to be Viking story. I can see a setup for Asher's story. This book was so good. I'm telling you, it was absolutely amazing. Flame and Maddie, these two are my favorite characters in the book. I felt like of all the books, my absolute favorites are these. Crux Untamed, because of the way that the relationship, the HEA, everything that had to go through, all of the issues that were confronted in this book is absolutely amazing. Deep Redemption, I sobbed my eyes out. I absolutely loved it. It needed to be told. It was done so well. We waited for so long on book 1 to hear what was going to happen, and we got it in this book. And then Flame and Maddie's story in both of these books were absolutely amazing. So you guys, I know that this is a long review, but I have to say, hands down, Tillie Cole, Hades Hangman series, MC, Cult, KKK, Devil Worshipping Clan, and everything brought so much to this story. The overall series is an absolute hands down 5 out of 5. I loved it for so many reasons because she confronted so many things. She brought up so many conflicts and challenging topics, but did it in a way that drove you into the darkness but brought you out of light. The way that she handled Flame's story with his traumatic past. These are people with deep trauma, lots of broken things. She even talks about how when you get into the MC club and you're part of the 1% of the MC club, that these are the lost souls, and they're the ones that are the wayward souls that are, you get into that club because you've been through some stuff. And then when you bring in the cult chicks to it as well, or these women that have been trafficked, you bring an extra layer of complexity to it. So if you have not read Tillie Cole's The Hades Hangman series, I absolutely recommend unequivocally that you do so. You will not be disappointed. Buckle down, prepare yourself, be ready for the ride, because she is going to take you on a ride, and I cannot wait until the next books come out. I'm hoping, it seems like she comes out with a book a year, so I'm thinking it's going to be 2021. I think it's going to be Viking story. I'm hoping with We'll see who it is. I don't know. They don't want to spoil it. But you guys, that is all that I have. Thank you so much if you hung in there for this incredibly long video. I greatly appreciate you. You know that I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thanks so much. Bye.